Hi guys, you're watching Halborn Flash Videos. I'm your host Arabdha, and today we have with us Aaluxx from Maya. Aaluxx, first of all, welcome to the chat. Maybe very quickly you can introduce yourself to our audience as well.
Thank you so much for having us. This is Aaluxx, co-founder of Maya. Maya is a friendly fork of Thorchain that started to work 2 years ago. Very excited because we will be launching in just 2 weeks from the recording of this video. So definitely very exciting stuff. And we've been audited by Halborn for 6 months now. So it's been a large process in that regard. Super thankful for all you guys do. I'm really looking forward to being on a live environment now in the next few weeks.
Fantastic. And it's such an exciting time to have the launch due in just 2 weeks from now. So we are all looking forward. Aaluxx, maybe you can share with us a bit about why did you choose the name Maya and what's like the starting story, inception story behind Maya itself?
Sure. Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know what Thorchain is a first real cross-chain decentralized exchange out there in the world where you can today swap Bitcoin for ETH for Atom for BNB. This is all native in their native chains. No wrapping, no pegging, no bridging. So we were fascinated by what Thorchain was doing, and when listening to a webinar about Thorchain with one of the people involved in that project, they said, eventually there might be 2 or 3 of these things in the market, all kind of collaborating with each other. And at the end of the day, Thorchain has limited bandwidth of how many chains they can have simultaneously. So, and there's many chains around, and we've seen a divergence of chains. Every cycle we see more and more chains being developed because of the different use cases and all of that. So it becomes more and more necessary to have more of these kind of L0 networks. And why I say all of these, when you ask me about why Maya, well, how Thorchain works is you are essentially swapping, when you swap Bitcoin to ETH, you are going through an intermediary called Rune, which is a native token of Thorchain, which lives on Thorchain network itself, which is a Cosmos SDK based chain. Yeah. So it's essentially using this as a reference of value and means of exchange. And as soon as I kind of was thinking like we'd like to do something in this space, I thought about the name of the token being CACAO. Why CACAO? Well, for those of you who don't know, CACAO was used as a exchange token, kind of in the ancient times in Maya, in the Maya culture. So the fun thing about it is the market set the exchange rate for CACAO, not one person or kind of it being like controlled by a party. It grew on trees. So, there was no emission or central authority or central planning in any kind of regard. And people just used it to exchange sheep for, seeds or whatever. So in that regard, I just immediately thought of that name. And if it was going to be CACAO, then the network had to be called Maya Protocol. So it was kind of like a illumination that just came at me, and we got to work, and we're here.
Yeah, that definitely looks inspired, and now I can see the thought process of why it's Maya and why it's called CACAO. Thank you for sharing that.
And I'm Mexican, so obviously I'm very proud of my culture here, and that's why obviously my thoughts went to that. I think important part of what we're doing is also all of this is to empower Latin America to know that they can do projects of value, they can do things that have a worldwide impact. In the past, it's like you have the New York Stock Exchange or you have Silicon Valley, and if you're not there, you're nobody, right? And the crypto world isn't like that anymore. As long as you have an internet connection, you're fine. Like I've been working out of Guadalajara all this time, so they can do it, and it's also why the reason I chose a name that had to do with this Latin pride, and empower others to believe it and build.
Fantastic. And what better way than Web3 to actually go out there, tell your story and empower that, right? So why did you choose Cosmos SDK to build on? What were your criteria of considerations there?
Sure. So we're a friendly fork of Thorchain. So we kind of inherited Cosmos SDK because Thorchain is built on Cosmos SDK, and thus the code base was already using it. But I can give you a bit of insight on why Thorchain uses Cosmos SDK, or why it was the obvious choice. When you're doing a decentralized exchange, and this decentralized exchange is managing many chains, and these chains have different assets with different finalities. You know, how many confirmation blocks you need how many blocks you need for confirmation. Then it kind of gets very messy if your chain has also delayed confirmation. It will get very, very messy. So, because when you're swapping to Bitcoin ETH, you have confirmation on Bitcoin, then you would have confirmation on Thorchain, then confirmation on ETH. It would be not very deterministic and very complicated, and it opens the doors for front running and things like that. So the beauty of Cosmos SDK and the technology behind it, which is Tendermint, BFT, Byzantine fault tolerant consensus mechanism, is that it has instant finality. Any block is already pre-confirmed by 67% consensus of the nodes. So this is just very, very powerful in any way you want to cut it, because it allows you to have a much more final and certain state of your decentralized exchange, which is useful for knowing what is the rate now, and what's the state now, and what's happening now, which are questions that seem easy, but it's very difficult to answer in Uniswap, for instance. That was one of the main things. And another thing is just it's easy to use. Cosmos SDK is a great library. It's developed on Golang, which is a very efficient language. It's just very powerful tool, which is why you'll see a plethora of Cosmos SDK chains going around. Their main reason is just for the ease of use. Thorchain's main reason was the instant finality stuff.
Fantastic. I guess ease of use goes a long way also to empower developers and feel more confident while building new use cases there. Great. And you already dropped some intel on CACAO and how you came up with that name. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit more about the token itself and what that means for the community as a whole.
Sure. So CACAO is the price reference and means of exchange between chains and assets. It's a utility token as well, so it's used to pay all the native fees. Actually, all of it is given out to the community. We, as developers, get zero CACAO at the beginning. How it works, and we don't vest over time either, which is interesting. The reason being, we don't believe it's the right strategy to incentivize team investors and the like with a native token, because it generates sell pressure in the token. So 90% of the CACAO is given out to early LPs, which because they receive free CACAO, they need to have some sort of lockup period. So you can find more about that on our white paper that you can publish a link to, docs.myprotocol.com. This is all called the fair launch or the liquidity auction, which starts on 7th of March, so just 2 weeks away. We airdrop 90% of it. The other 10% goes to our reserve for impermanent loss protection and protocol-owned liquidity. So we don't get any of that on purpose, because what we will get is a percentage of the fees, 10% of the fees. So 90% of the fees goes to nodes, validator nodes and LPs. 10% of the fees goes to us to compensate us. So we start with zero, and if you see that, it's kind of a success-based fee. We're not interested in hyping the price of CACAO at all. CACAO is a tool. It's a tool for the people, and nobody controls it. What we want to do is increase volume and real utility, real yield, real value on the chain. So that's more or less a bit on that regard. So we also don't have any governance rights, or the governance is carried out by nodes. These nodes bond large amounts of LP units on the protocol, so they have a high stake bond and just high stakes on the chain. There's no delegation, so this bond is really from the node, and they have an inherent economic interest in the security of the protocol. And what else can CACAO do? Well, it's just very good at maintaining value. since it has something called a deterministic value. On THORChain, it's 3x TVL, and you'll see that Rune never goes below that. Whereas on Maya, it's 1x TVL, just because of the economic and security changes we did that were audited by Halborn. So it's 1x TVL in that regard. So, it's a minimum price CACAO will be is whatever we have logged in the pools.
Oh, that's a plethora of features, and I'm sure the community is really looking forward to work with it and see what it can do with the CACAO token. Maya protocol is a friendly fork of THORChain. However, it does have a lot of cool new innovative features. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit more about what is so novel about it and what you have introduced new to the ecosystem.
Sure. Aside from launching CACAO very fairly, having all of it circulate and all of it in the pools from the beginning, another of the main things we did is called liquidity nodes. Nodes on THORChain bond large amounts of Rune, which is great since it's a very slashable bond. But it means that a lot of the capital of the protocol is locked in vaults and not doing any work. And that would be fine if it had to be a small percentage of the protocol, but on THORChain, it needs to be around half. So right now, today, we have around $130 million of pooled assets on THORChain, and that means there's also around $100 to $130 million of bonds from nodes, which is not doing anything. And the problem is the yield from the pools needs to be diluted and shared across the whole capital base. So all participants receive essentially half the APY, half the yield. On Maya, what we did is, what if we allow pooled assets, so the LP units, be the bond instead? So now those $130 million of pooled asset includes the bonds of the nodes within itself. So now the APY of the system is not being diluted into another capital base, rather in the same bucket. So what that makes is a lot of powerful consequences. You need half of the capital to scale the network. People get twice the perceived real yield. There's less latency between nodes and LPs because they have the same economic tool. You align the interest of nodes and LPs. The nodes will take more care of LPs since they are LPs too. And just many other things. Obviously, we needed to change a lot of the economic and security assumptions. On THORChain, around half of the capital is in bonds, but they can go down to 33% if push comes to shove, where it's considered to be unsafe. And at that point, there's something called incentive pendulum, where at that point, nodes get paid 100% of the yield and LPs zero, which will incentivize more nodes to come in, so to go above 33%, and LPs to leave, which again helps you get above 33%. Maya works similar, but instead of our balance being at half and half and the unsafe part being 66-33%, our balance is at 85% node LP units and 15% just normal LP units. And the point of no return where LPs get zero yield is at 75% of the capital being funded by nodes. So it seems high. You say, oh, but then you need much more capital. Not really, because again, going to the THORChain example, with let's say it was $100 million of pooled capital, just to have more squared numbers. On THORChain, you need for balance another 100 million, so 200 million total. Whereas on Maya, of the 100 million, if 85% of that is node bonds, it's 85 million. So you actually even require less node capital, and everybody has a higher perceived yield. So it just makes it more capital efficient, and capital efficiency is super powerful. Like, what if I told you, you have a lemonade stand that you needed to pay $10,000 for, and you were getting $1,000 per month, and I had to do the same thing, but just with $5,000. That means I'm getting twice the yield on my $5,000. So I can probably scale more lemonade stands faster than you. So that's kind of the reason why we did this. Obviously, we have to test it in the wild and battle test it. And if we succeed, we will be very happy to help THORChain transition to a liquidity node model if they want to, because we believe at the end of the day in redundancy and reliability. Like, we don't want to be flying solo. We want to be, a jet with two engines in case one goes down for a while, one has some consensus failure or any other issue in one chain. Well, the world doesn't stop. You still have another engine. So we believe that's important. Think of Visa and MasterCard, when
coming
you have
together for this.
you have such an important infrastructure product, you need to make sure you have reliability. And many of people listening now probably use Trust Wallet, which is one of the most used wallets around. You probably don't know, but today you can swap on Trust Wallet using Thorchain. If you see on the app on iOS and Android, people don't know even that they're using it because Thorchain and Maya are supposed to be infrastructure projects just running in the background. Many people in retail would not be aware of it. Again, being infrastructure, you need reliability, you need redundancy, and that's why we're building Maya.
Fantastic. I absolutely love that MasterCard and Visa analogy, and I think it helped me understand as well the benefits a lot more. Also, like higher yields and lesser capital needed to sustain the ecosystem is always sounds like great news to me. We are at Halborn. Our business is security, so I need to ask you, what has been your security strategy with Maya protocol thus far?
Well, we've worked with Halborn already for 6 or 7 months, doing audits of essentially every new feature we have. It's not an easy code base to use. Thorchain itself is like 100 to 120,000 lines of code, and we have some more code on top of that. So definitely not an easy job. We thankfully inherit a lot of the security measures Thorchain has developed over time because of being in the field so long already. Thorchain, for those who don't know, has been in a live environment since April 2021. And the fact that they've been online and have endured attacks have made them more and more resilient. So all of that, for instance, what's called the Bifrost, which is how you connect to other chains, is completely unchained in Maya, and that's the largest attack surface. Also, we keep a lot of things like something called the solvency checker. The solvency checker is essentially the chain is tracking how much funds they have in the actual wallets in the target chain. So how much BTC do I have in my Bitcoin wallet owned by Maya and Thorchain? And it checks also how much it believes it should have. And if they're different, it halts. It halts for a second just to see what's going on and give time to node operators and the core development team to fix whatever problem there is. There's also volume throttling, which all of a sudden there's this normal volume of exchange on Thorchain, and all of a sudden, boom, it triples. It will throttle down the speed at which it will service those transactions because it might be to some anomaly, maybe an infinite myth bug in Cosmos, Gaia, so Atom happened, and we don't know about it, but then there's some guy trying to swap Atom for Bitcoin on Thorchain and exploit us. So it will throttle those transactions to give time again to nodes and co-development team to see what's going on. There's other security measures out there that just help us avoid making a mistake. There will probably be bugs in the system, but if there's responses or fail-safes to those failures, you will probably be all right. And thankfully, we inherit all of that from Thorchain. And finally, we are about to activate also bulk bounties now that we have a public StageNet and the mainnet environment. And we'll continue to just work on security. It's the main drive. Like, I would love to have launched 8 months ago. It definitely would have been cheaper, but it wasn't the time. We needed to go through the security measures and to the appropriate time and exercises to make sure funds are safe.
Definitely. I mean, it's great to see that you haven't treated it as an afterthought, and you have been keeping in place internal mechanisms, having external cybersecurity partners, and also going with bug bounties in order to make sure all the specs are pretty much ticked off. So fantastic. Also, like, what do you look for in an external cybersecurity partner such as us when you partner up and decide to work together on your security strategy?
What I was looking for a lot was just guidance. Experience is something very valuable. And at the end of the day, Halborn has had a lot of experience in Cosmos SDK in what things can go wrong for something that is not so obvious. If it were obvious, we would have already designed for it. But there's so many little tiny bits that the experience just shows you, and there's probably a mistake here, mistake there. So that is something super valuable, your experience, and has added a lot of value. And it's something that is a transfer of experience, a transfer of technology, right? We now have a lot of experience ourselves, thanks to you. Another thing is just also being aware of what's going on. And this has something that Halborn has done superbly, which is, hey, there was this update for this reason. Please make sure to update this library because the last version has a problem, and you need to be aware of this that happened here, this that happened there. So just kind of raising the red flag of things happening outside, because we are very focused on our code, and we are not always looking around and seeing what's happening outside of our scope. And finally, just having somebody review your homework. It's I play piano. I took piano lessons for years, and people were asking me, but are you still learning? And I told them, not really. But having my teacher come on Monday pushes me to work harder during the week, because I have my meeting on Monday, and she will listen to me play, and I need to play well. So I see that kind of as well with Halborn. We have our meetings on Tuesday mornings, and we need to have some progress. We need to follow up on things we're working on, and we need to be very professional, because you kind of lose discipline if you're I'm not even on the development team, by the way. I know how to read code. I don't write it, but because of that, our tech lead and co-founder, Itzamna, he didn't have anybody to report to except ourselves, which we're partners. So now Halborn kind of is at
checkpoint
exogenous system, just requiring more discipline, requiring more follow-up, which has been very useful to have us at the top of our game. So those would be kind of the three from top of my head that I think I would look for again if I ever had another protocol and wished it to undergo audits.
Fantastic. Proactive security has always been something we have wanted in our DNA, so it's great to see that it is working as intended. All right, so to end with, how big is the team? And maybe you can share a little bit about your own story of how you ended up in this spot, exactly starting Maya.
We are 3 co-founders. We have a software development agency. So we've been involved in startups, in apps, in all sort of things. So we love technology, and we always wanted to be doing something in crypto. I personally have been invested since 2018. I'm the type of guy to read white papers and just be involved. And we always wanted to do something, but we didn't want to do a smart contract or something like that. We wanted something more serious, but also something we could chew. And when I found out about Thorchain and got the idea to fork it and work on improving it, or interpretation of what can be done, I spoke with them and we said, okay, let's do it. We had to hire another CTO because one of our Itzamna came over full time to Maya, and we started building the Maya team, which currently has 5 developers, including Itzamna himself, all Golang, which is the language to program on Cosmos SDK, Thorchain, and Maya. Yeah, we've been working on that for 2 years now. So very familiar with the code base, with how it's all done, and just looking forward to go out into the wild. We also obviously have marketing team, copywriters, community building, some kind of management, stuff like that. But definitely the main heroes of the story are the Golang developers. Shout out to them. They've done a great job, and I'm very proud and happy to work with them. So yeah, that's kind of our background. They all have different backgrounds themselves and years of experience. And we obviously had to go a lot of training on deeper Go and deeper in Cosmos SDK and deeper on Thorchain. So it's always a process to get somebody on board on all of these. It's definitely not simple. It's been a journey, a challenge, but
yeah,
a very,
it's a work in progress.
very gratifying.
It always
one.
is.
Yeah.
Right. So great to hear your story, learn a little bit about Maya, also understand the etymology, the word root, where you guys are coming from, all the mechanisms you have in place. This is a lovely conversation. Myself, I'm pretty sure, and the rest of the community as well is really looking forward to the next 2 weeks, after which you launch this live, and this is a very exciting phase to be in. So thank you again for taking the time to have this conversation with us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you haven't used Thorchain, I highly recommend to go to thorwallet.org, use their app. They have mobile and desktop, and web app. I highly recommend to use them so you get familiar with what Thorchain is and how it works, but also to be on the lookout because they will be supporting my launch. So you will be able to participate in our launch there and swapping and savers and everything thereafter. So good luck in your Thorchain and Maya journeys. Thank you all for listening, and thank you for having us here, to you and to all of Halborn.
Of course, thanks again for tuning in.